The Simpsons.
Hello, and welcome to the Simpsons Countdown, the podcast where we go back to the beginning and watch all of The Simpsons to trace its creative evolution and count down, finding the exact moment in which the show began to suck. I'm your host, Erix Antoine, and this week I'm joined by my lovely friend Arianny, who is chiming in today from the Badlands of Newark, New Jersey. We are discussing the episode Homer's Night Out, which originally aired on March 25th, 1990. It's an enjoyable enough episode with a decent share of laughs, but it also has some weird optics when it comes to sexual politics. And so, here we have perhaps the first outwardly political episode of this podcast. I do want to re-emphasize the word political, however, and put some air quotes around it, because although the issues we discuss over the next 45 minutes are definitely serious, some even call them important, but the fact is, when all is said and done, we are just two friends talking. We hope you can sit back, or lean forward, or lay down, or however you most comfortably choose to listen to your podcasts, and enjoy this spirited conversation. And who knows, you might get something valuable out of the insights provided. Here we go. Hey, so how you doing, Arianny?
I'm good. How are you? How's quarantine going?
Oh, it's going great. It's going fantastic. I read an article this morning. I think I posted it on Facebook. Something about how Gen Xers they're having an easier time of it because we are used to wasting our time. I don't know. There's something.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. It's kind of true, I guess.
I've
But
seen a lot of people joke about that with millennials too. Like basically how Generation Z, like the kids are like going crazy because all their graduation is canceled, their prom is canceled, and the rest of us were just like old and just like whatever. We like staying home anyway.
yeah, it's kind of interesting. I mean, you're a millennial, and
Mhm.
and people confuse millennials with Gen Zers all the time. Like that's what
Yes.
it's a common misconception. Like it's
I
become
did
sort of
join
blanket.
TikTok though.
Yeah, well, that's very Gen Z of you. So some of those videos are kind of funny, I guess. They're a little
They
annoying.
are funny. The people are so creative, and I'm just like, dude, how do you have the time for this? And I can't even learn the dances. I'm just like, I'm here for the makeup.
Right. Well, and this may stand as a document because you said how's the quarantine going? We are recording this on March 29th, 2020. So
Mhm.
it will air a few weeks from now, but it will post then. And if you're listening to it years from now, hopefully we are all still around, and this didn't actually turn out to be the apocalypse as so many are predicting that it will be.
No, not at all.
Because man, what a lame apocalypse that would be if this is how it
This
ends.
is not like
Yeah.
how the Terminator promised us it would
Right, yeah,
be.
it's like it's not. There's a lack of action. There's a lack of like drones flying around shooting at buildings. Like it's just. I mean, I look outside my window right now, and it's like 28 days later. It's dead, and,
Yeah.
and that's creepy and eerie and cool. But that's not enough. I want more. Like at some point, I do want like there's got to be like a storm of zombies coming down the avenue. Like I can see.
No,
Or I mean,
no
if
zombies.
it's gonna happen, well, it's played out, but it's the more homegrown apocalypse scenario, I
No,
guess. So
no zombies. We're too like leftists. We don't have guns. We don't have shit. Like,
that is true. That is true. Like that is the one case where the alt-right would have one up on
oh,
us. And
they're ready. They
yeah,
are
they're
ready.
ready
And
to
you
go.
saw
They're ready
people,
to go.
and you saw people are like lining up to buy guns and stuff, right? I'm like, what are you guys gonna do? Shoot the coronavirus?
They're protecting their toilet paper from like that's what it is now. It's like they're hoarding all the toilet paper, and I don't understand that. Like that's the one thing that is still confusing to me. Why the toilet paper? I don't get it.
Don't know.
You
People
know,
don't do that during hurricanes, which is weird. It's like, okay, bread, eggs, milk, and now toilet paper.
I mean, it's like food, and also how much toilet paper do you need? It just seems so insane to me that that's what's run out. Like that's what people are getting. It's like,
I don't get it.
are they
I
wrapping
don't get
themselves
it.
up like mummies? What are they doing? People care more about toilet paper than they do about food. It's weird.
Every dead body that is not exterminated
becomes one of them. It gets up and kills. The people it kills get up and kill.
But, this is something that nobody could have conceived 30 years ago when the episode we're going to talk about today, Homer's Night Out, was conceived and released to the world. So we're going to talk about that episode. But first, a little background about your experience with The Simpsons.
I'm pretty much the same age as The Simpsons. I'm turning 30 this year, so I've pretty much been around The Simpsons my whole life. I watched it pretty much every day growing up. When it came on Fox, it was always at 7 o'clock after the news at night. So I would pretty much watch it every day. And I don't know why, because it was an adult, cartoon. So a lot of things weren't as accessible to me, but it had kid characters. There's Bart and Lisa. Homer being the dumb dad, obviously. That was funny to me. But there were definitely a lot of jokes that went over my head as a kid. And this type of episode, though, is the kind of thing that maybe I wouldn't have understood so much as a kid. Like, I growing up, The Simpsons was always really important to me, just because culturally and everything about it,
Like, what's your earliest memory of watching The Simpsons? Because, I doubt you remember being a baby,
No.
like sitting on your little high chair like in front of the TV.
No, not that young, but I definitely remembering it, watching it as a kid, like maybe at least 6 or 7 years old, watching The Simpsons. And I remember it always came on at 7 o'clock. So I knew that was when The Simpsons was showing. So I would watch it. And my favorite episode is the one where Bart sells his soul to Milhouse. I love that episode so much. So, like, things like that I hold on to dearly, and quoting it a lot as a kid, like, it permeated into my little millennial brain, and now as an adult, like, we see people just taking it and using it as memes because it's so memeable. Like, I'm convinced that The Simpsons and SpongeBob SquarePants as cartoons are the most memeable shows ever. Just because they're so easy to, like, take parts of it that everybody knows about, everybody remembers, and make jokes about it.
That's a good point. I've never been a SpongeBob guy, and you're not alone. I have a lot of friends that are about your age that are into it, and so that's great. And it's a classic thing. There's even like a Broadway musical, but I get it. It's one of those cultural things, and The Simpsons is the same way. I guess for me, The Simpsons is like my SpongeBob in the sense that it's the one thing that everybody in my generation's into, and we all remember it. And I guess it's very memeable because it's so quotable. They've been around for so long, and they've gone through so much. They've covered so much of the landscape of pop culture that you can pretty much find something for any occasion.
But here's the thing.
Anywhere.
Here's the thing. If the history of SpongeBob is actually really similar to The Simpsons, because SpongeBob is about 20 years old now. I remember when that premiered. So SpongeBob is about 20 years old now, and it's kind of going the same way as The Simpsons as far as how it just became an instant cultural, like, hit. And it was just everywhere, just the merchandising everywhere. There was albums, like music albums put out with music from the show. Just, the quality of the show. Fantastic for the first, like, maybe 5-6 seasons, however it is, and then just kind of, like, I guess as the audience, like, aged out, and when certain creative people involved with the show left, then things started to change. But the show is still going. It's kind of like repeating itself for a new generation. But I'm the person that's like in between both of them, because I definitely grew up with The Simpsons, and I also grew up with SpongeBob, and both of those, like, cultural landmarks have kind of, like, merged together and kind of, like, made me as kind of like permeated my sense of humor in a way. Not even just for me, like, for my whole generation. Like, the way millennials brain work is just like our sense of humor is very much informed by both The Simpsons and I think SpongeBob. There is an essay in there about that. I'm gonna, like, get to work on that during my quarantine. Yeah, I'd have to start watching more of those and see what I can come up with then.
SpongeBob, I didn't realize that it was still going on. Like, they're making new episodes?
Absolutely. Making new episodes, still like crazy popular. Still. All those other Nicktoons that I grew up with, those are not around anymore. SpongeBob is still there.
Maybe I'm wrong about that. I thought one of them died. I thought one of the voice actors passed.
No, the creator of the show passed away.
Oh,
Steven
okay.
Hillenburg. Steven Hillenburg was a creator of the show. He passed away last year. And apparently he had left the show for creative differences, I think, a while back, and that's when the quality of the show shifted. But then I think he had recently come back to, help work on it, and then sadly he passed away. I think everybody else that's still, as far as voice actor goes, is still involved in the show. So that's another comparison for The Simpsons. I don't even know how much those people would be getting paid.
It's probably, I mean, the Simpsons people get paid quite a lot. I mean,
Let's sing our own song about the joy of staying indoors. I know of a place where you never get harmed, a magical place.
back to The Simpsons. Homer's Night Out. Okay. So, had you seen this episode before?
I'm certain that I have seen it before, but it's because it's the early seasons. It's not one of those ones that stick in your brain that you remember. It seems kind of like a throwaway episode in a way. Like I noticed, like when it opens very much like a sitcom with like the cute little music and like the little bantering with Homer and Marge in the beginning. Like I'm just like, oh right, The Simpsons is a sitcom without a laugh track.
So how was the office birthday party?
Oh, it was delightful.
Right. Well, very few of the first season episodes are even considered classic nowadays because when people talk about classic Simpsons, they might go as far back as like the third or even second season when they start like throwing out classic episodes at you, but they almost never talk about the first season. And there are a lot of reasons for that. I mean, if we're being honest, it's a little rough around the edges. And you watch these first 13 episodes, and they were still trying to figure out the show. So it wouldn't surprise me if number one you don't remember this episode, or even if you hadn't ever seen it before, especially if you began to watch it, in like the mid '90s or late '90s when these episodes were all about a memory, and at that point they weren't even rerunning them that much. Like
No.
you couldn't really see first season episodes. I remember when they finally released the DVD boxed set. This is like in 2001 or something. When they finally started to release the series on DVD, there was a big deal about the box set of the first season coming out because it was going to be, for a lot of people, it was going to be the first time they were going to be watching those episodes in years. So that just goes to show that back then, yeah, the first season was not something that people really went back to. So
Yeah.
yeah, it doesn't surprise me. And what you said also about how it's very much like a sitcom, right? Because that's in this first season, you really see that ultimately, yeah, no laugh track, but the formula, the way it's put together, it's a sitcom. It's an animated sitcom. It follows pretty much the pattern. This same story could easily have been done in a live action sitcom.
Oh yeah, for
There's
sure.
not there's nothing here that's particularly outlandish. It's a pretty basic sitcom plot, and even with a limited budget, a show like something from the time, I don't know, Roseanne, with John Goodman ends up going to a stag party. I mean, I don't know, but they could have done that on that show. Not that they would have, but they could have. So yeah, it's very much like a sitcom. It has a pretty basic plot line, right? I mean, it's the one about Homer going to a stag party, to a bachelor party, and getting, and Bart has his new spy camera, which he orders it from a comic book, and it takes 6 months to arrive. I think that's pretty interesting. That this shitty is it like a what kind of camera? It's like an instant camera. Like I don't.
It's
He
not even an Insta camera because there's that scene where he has to develop the photograph
right.
in the
So it's
dark.
it's it's not a Polaroid. It's like a camera. It's a legit camera, but
Yeah.
and it takes him 6 months to receive it. He finally receives it, and he's excited about it. He ends up taking a picture of his dad, dancing
Absolutely.
with what Princess Cashmere, right? Was it Princess?
Princess Cashmere.
It's a basic plot. Essentially, it's about the conflict that arises from that and anything else. There's nothing particularly great about it. As you were watching it now, were you basically enjoying it? I mean, in
I
terms
was
of,
enjoying it. I do like some of the gags that are in it. I noticed the chalkboard gag in the beginning had Bart writing, "Do not call my teacher hotcakes," which I'm just like, that's kind of like a through line for this episode. I've never seen like a chalkboard gag kind of relate to an episode in a way.
I hadn't picked up on that. You're absolutely right. It's not common for the chalkboard gags or the couch gags to have anything really to do with the episode. In this particular case, there is a thematic connection. We have this episode that is commenting on the objectification of women. To have that as the chalkboard gag, I guess, is appropriate. You're right. And it's one point, I guess, in the episode's favor.
Uh-oh, it's the female man. Female carrier, Bart.
In regards to the photography, so it's this shitty mail order camera. Bart takes a picture. It's pretty good quality. It's a pretty good quality photograph, I would think, for what is this shitty thing he ordered off of a comic book.
Yeah.
And he makes copies of it because like this stupid photograph of like his dad dancing with an exotic dancer at a stag party. This picture becomes the talk of the town, like the talk of the town.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It's very strange. Like something like that just kind of like blows up, and I guess in Springfield it's like a big small town. It's just like, yeah, everybody knows Homer, and this sort of thing. And obviously it's very embarrassing for Marge. She is pissed.
What is the meaning of this?
Hey, my photo.
Your
photo?
Uh-oh.
Why, you little...
Why, you big...
So she is pissed, and I guess she's pissed because it's embarrassing.
Because one, he lied. She was like, "Is this a stag party?" He's like, "No, it's just." And two, this picture got all over town, of him looking pretty foolish in it with this pretty lady, and everybody's laughing at him. Therefore, they're laughing at her. But I think it also speaks to like the mindset of like this sort of thing in the 90s.
It speaks to a very conservative sort of mindset about this whole thing. What do you mean exactly? Like when you say the mindset of the 90s? I'm curious what you mean.
Because the way obviously this woman, she's an exotic dancer, so she's basically a sex worker in a way. So maybe this sort of thinking doesn't go away, but I think obviously in this day and age we have a more modern sensibility towards that kind of profession or that kind of type of work. But the fact that Marge is so angry, that Homer danced with this woman, and he danced in a, pretty innocent type of thing. It wasn't like he got a lap dance or anything like crazy like that they're not going to put obviously in this type of show. But I don't know if she's more mad about the fact that it was with an exotic dancer or just like all the other stuff surrounding it. But I think the way people thought about this sort of thing in the 90s, it's just like, yeah, of course she should be mad. Versus now, I don't know how someone would react to something like that.
I think that the optics are a little bit weird here, just in general. And a little bit of a preface to what I'm going to say, because I'm not really anyone who's, even if you've heard previous episodes of this podcast or if you've had a conversation with me in person, you will know that I'm not like a hardcore PC guy. In fact, that stuff tends to annoy me. When we look at something from 50 years ago and go like, oh my God, it's so inappropriate, the jokes or whatever. I'm going, well, yeah, what do you expect? It was done 50 years ago, man. You got to look at things in context. So that's not what I'm gonna go off on here. What I'm basically trying to point out is that I think the optics are just strange, and even in 1990 they were kind of strange because what you just said about it, I think it depends on the person. But well, first of all, there's the whole thing about Homer just looks foolish. There's nothing particularly wrong. I mean, it's pretty innocent or pretty like tame. He's just dancing on the table with her. It's not, like you said, it's not like he's getting a lap dance. Now, again, it's something that they weren't going to portray that explicitly. So maybe it's supposed to imply that it's like he got a lap dance. I suppose, which, depending on a person's mindset about it or however, maybe that would be something upsetting for a certain person.
I think the idea is, and this is kind of like, I think, the way most people think is that if you're a man that has a wife and you go to a strip club or a bachelor party and there's an exotic dancer there and you are dancing with the dancer, she dances with you, you're basically cheating. I think that's the through line with there because she kicks him out. She throws him out of the house because I guess the implication is that, oh, he cheated on her. I'm just like, it's not what cheating is. You know?
Yeah,
Like, I wouldn't think that was cheating. Obviously, she's mad, and she certainly has, the right to be mad if, he disrespected her. He lied about what the party was. He made her look foolish, or Bart rather, was involved with that as well. But, I think the implication that we're supposed to think is that, oh, Homer cheated on Marge.
yeah, or
It's
like
kind of ridiculous.
came close to it. Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure if we're supposed to necessarily think that as an audience, but the implication is that for Marge, this is as bad
Yeah,
as cheating.
exactly.
As you said, when she kicks him out of the house, she's even like crying. You know,
Yeah.
like if he's done the most horrible thing in the world,
Which is
that
kind of
anybody.
insane considering everything else that Homer does in the future.
But where will I sleep?
My suggestion is for you to sleep in the filth you created.
Would a motel be okay?
These episodes were not produced in the order that they aired. So it's not that they ever thought about this in any kind of continuity, but it is kind of interesting that this episode aired back to back. It aired a week after Life on the Fast Lane, and Homer forgets her birthday, gets her a dumb gift, last minute gift,
That's
which is a
the
bowling
French bowling man.
ball. Exactly. So it's the French bowling, and in that episode, Marge is justifiably very pissed at Homer for being a selfish asshole, and she comes close to, but doesn't, having an affair. And she comes close to having an affair with the French bowling instructor, and in the end, she does not do it, and forgives Homer and restores that. But my point is, it's kind of weird that if we look at it, if there were an emotional continuity, so this is the next episode, and here you could almost say, well, maybe she's feeling. I'm not saying they intended this, but well, maybe she's projecting because she came close to cheating on him, so now, oh shit. But but the point is that they didn't think it through. That's not, again, these weren't written in order, so it's not like they thought. It's just a coincidence that they aired those episodes back to back where you can make that connection. But it's
I
not.
never thought of that.
Yeah, but ultimately it is this thing where the fact that he danced, the fact that Bart saw him, she feels that's inappropriate, that Bart should be exposed to this, that she should see his father behaving this way with a woman. That's ultimately what it is. It's this huge thing, which ultimately, when you look at that picture, it's tame. Now, here's the thing and you even kind of brought this up, what the episode does, the story kind of does, because it's talking about the objectification of women, and it seems to equate in a subtle way exotic dancing with sex work, as in prostitution.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're different, but they're different things. I mean, I think that we do have an understanding that being a stripper, because let's operate under the assumption that Princess Cashmere is not, she's a stripper, and obviously this was a bachelor party, so obviously she's stripped. We don't see this on the show, but we can assume that eventually that's what happened. But my point is that there is a difference between a stripper and a prostitute. They're not necessarily the same thing. Sometimes they are, but they're not automatically the same thing. And in this story, it kind of equates it in a way that I think is, like I said, the optics are kind of strange.
The way I'm understanding, it's all kind of under the umbrella of sex work. It all kind of like goes together in a way. And sometimes there are strippers who do both.
Sure.
So, but you're right. It's not the same being just an exotic dancer versus being someone who engages in prostitution. So, but I think that's the thing. A lot of people, and plenty of people today, do that. They equate all of that together. This is a woman who is selling her body for entertainment, for pleasure, whatever.
Sure. Right. And they kind of, and here's the part that I find kind of strange. And I really do think that this was strange even in 1990, that it was a weirdly conservative sort of viewpoint. The episode is against the objectification of women, right? Which I think we can agree is a valid and noble stance to have. But it takes this stand basically by demonizing Princess Kashmir, or at least demonizing what she's doing.
Mm-hmm.
It's implying that this is wrong. That's the implication. I mean, unless I'm misreading it, but I think that the implication is that this is wrong. Exotic dancing, stripping, that sort of thing is wrong.
Well, lots of people believe that. Lots of people believe that now, and I'm certain. And even growing up, that's it's definitely the type of thing I was told. You don't want to be that type of person because they're bad people. They're
Mhm.
bad for doing this. They're bad for engaging in this type of work. People project moralistic failings onto
Mhm.
people who do those things. They're telling them that they're dirty, they're wrong, they're disgusting, and that's part of the reason why one, people laugh at Homer when that picture goes around, and also why Marge is so angry at him. Obviously, there's a difference too in how the women react to this sort of thing versus how the men on the show react to this sort of thing. Like the father who gets mad at his son is just like,
Son, why are you wasting your time with this sleazy trash?
Sorry, Dad.
Wait till I show the guys at work this little doozy.
Mr. Burns wants to get advice from Homer on how to be a ladies' man.
You seem to have a way with women, a certain animal magnetism. Help me, Simpson. Tell me your secret.
I don't really know, sir.
Simpson!
Well, mine, Dynam.
The men are like super hypocritical about it. Like the father and Mr. Burns, it was just like, this is offensive, this is wrong, da da da. But behind closed doors, they're all about it.
Right. Well, that's valid too. I mean, that's again, this is satire, this is comedy, it's parody, and that is a valid thing. People are like that, as you pointed out, and people do like. There is this general perception that I guess persists today of this sort of work as being wrong or inappropriate or whatever it is. But what I think it brings to mind, and this is the part that's the implication ultimately, not only that it's wrong, but it's almost as if Princess Kashmir, or as a blanket statement, any person in this line of work has no agency. That's my point. What is the point that they're trying to make? That she is being exploited, right? That's ultimate. That this is an exploitative line of work. But unless we're talking about something illegal, one would think that Princess Kashmir chose this. I would imagine. For whatever reason, she chose this line of work. It's not, she wasn't forced into it. She's not, this is something she chose to do. And so that's why when I say the optics are weird, it's sort of like, it's weird to demonize that. She chose it. You know what I mean? And
exactly.
People choose this, people do choose to work as exotic dancers or strippers or even prostitutes. It's not automatically the fact that you're in that line of work means that you're being exploited. It can be that, but it doesn't necessarily mean that automatically. And that's why if you're making a statement about the objectification of women by demonizing the women or by demonizing their chosen profession, it's just a strange way to go about it. It's very well-meaning. You have that whole thing. I mean, Homer gives that corny speech at the end.
I've something to say to all the sons out there. It's about women and how they are not mere objects with curves that make us crazy. No, they are our wives. They are our daughters, our sisters, our grandmas, our aunts. They are our mothers.
Is the implication that this shouldn't happen? Like we shouldn't enjoy these things that in many cases are legal and fine, and someone chose to do this, whether it's this or even pornography. These are things that are taboo subjects. They're not criminal. They're not wrong necessarily.
No, and you're right. And there's also a lot to say about the exploitation of this type of women in this industry, because it can be, it absolutely can be. These things don't exist inside of a vacuum. We can't. There's like a line that you have to cross where you don't project moralistic failings onto people for choosing this line of work, but also there is a line of just like, okay, there's fetishization of people and there's dehumanizing of people who are in this kind of work, because Marge says the whole thing that she's really mad about too is that she thinks that Homer taught Bart a bad lesson where Homer is objectifying this woman. It's just like, no, this is someone who has thoughts and feelings. She's not just a person with a body that needs to be ogled at. But of course, this is also her job. Her job is to have her body be ogled at. And I think she's well aware of this. And I think anybody in that line of work is absolutely well aware. I like too at the end where like, Homer goes and she's just like, I want you to talk to my son. And she's just like kind of like exasperated, like, all right, fine, I have to go to work, but whatever, I'll answer his questions. I thought that was kind of pretty funny because these people are just they're just doing their job. It's not about who they are as a person, whether they're good, whether they're bad, whether they're being exploited, whether they're not. I think it's just kind of like a cultural thing where we as a society have projected this type of idea onto people who do sex work.
Are you saying that you think the episode, in fact, is trying to shed light on that, on the fact that we do that?
I think so, but I think ultimately the lesson that the episode tends to go for is that we shouldn't exploit these type of women, which is a good lesson. But I think the show ultimately moralizes the issue. I think it ultimately says if you go to strip clubs or do these types of things, you kind of have hell to pay for that sort of thing because you are dehumanizing the women who are involved in this sort of thing, that you are disrespectful in a way. And so I think that's ultimately the angle the show goes for, is that Homer has to learn a lesson from this. This is one of those Homer learns a lesson episodes.
Right. Well, one of the many. Yes, one of the many.
Yeah.
I think men and women will view this differently, and in this episode we see that. And as you pointed out, a lot of the men are portrayed they're portrayed as hypocrites. That they scoff at it, but behind closed doors they can get down with it just the same. My point is, like, that guy, like that kid's dad, or Mr. Burns, is the sort of person who definitely would go to a strip club and be objectifying left and right.
Mr. Burns was in the strip club at the end.
How does he do it, Smithers?
He's a love machine.
So he'd be the sort of person that would just look at this woman as a piece of meat and whatever. But that doesn't automatically mean that everybody that goes to a strip club, that's what they're doing. I mean, of course, on one level, yes, it is. But because,
on a level, yes, it is. Because that's what they're signing up for, that, like, and we've all played like GTA. We've all played, those types of games where like that's one of the things you have to do. You go to the club. I'm doing a Sopranos rewatch right now where a lot of the show's action takes place in a strip club. I drive by that same strip club on my way home from work every day. So these things exist.
Don't stop believing.
On some level, we do that. On some level, like when a person is going to a strip club or when a person is watching pornography, on some level, yes, you are objectifying. That's what you're doing. But I do think it's a little bit weird. Maybe not weird's not the word, but I do think it's a little bit, why shame that? Pornography is not illegal. A porn star, that's the line of work that these people have chosen. And you can look at it, again, it's a taboo thing, but they're not doing anything illegal. And yes, when someone chooses that form of entertainment, there is an inherent objectification there. But I do think that on an individual basis, though, it will depend on the person. I mean, you can be aware that at that moment that you are engaging with the pornography, or you are objectifying, you are getting caught up in the, let's say, the escapist aspect of it, where you're using at that moment, yes, you're doing it for pleasure and just objectification, but it won't necessarily mean that that's how you see women. You know what I mean?
Yeah. We also project like a moral failing on the men too. Like if you're a man who watches that sorts of thing, then you're a dog, you're a pig, you're a jerk, you're this, you're that.
Right.
And like all that could possibly be true.
But it's not necessarily true. And I think the thing about this episode is that it ultimately, by demonizing the industry of sex work, because it's ultimately just this blanket thing. Because I said, we never get the understanding that Princess Cashmere is a prostitute. We just know that she's a dancer, possibly a stripper, but that's it. That's all we know for sure. But in a sense, it is conflating it as sort of this umbrella under which it all falls, and it ultimately demonizes the whole thing. It's a tricky line to cross. I mean, I can understand why they did it, and then again, it's a valid lesson. As you said, Homer does learn a certain lesson. Like, so he seems to know that it's wrong to objectify women. So then that means, okay, so stop watching porn, stop going to strip clubs, stop. I'm not really sure what they're trying to say in the end. That it's wrong to do those things, or that it's wrong to do those things with objectification on your mind.
I have no idea. That's the thing. This episode is pretty confusing in a way, in terms of like how it chooses to give its lesson. The whole thing here is that Marge got mad. Marge got mad because Homer did this. But she got mad because of how it affected Bart. And I'm just like, but I don't get it. Like, I really don't. Like, for me, like, I felt Marge's reaction. I thought, her being mad was perfectly valid. I thought her kicking him out was just, like, out of pocket. I was just like, wait. But that's the thing. Like I said, like, people equate this sort of thing with cheating. I'm sure if you ask women right now who have partners, if your partner goes to a strip club and gets lap dances or sees, women dancing or whatever, is that cheating? And I'm sure many of them would say yes. If it were for me, I'd probably be like, why do you have to go out there?
Right,
but if it was like something for like a bachelor party, something like that, I probably wouldn't mind, as long as you kept things appropriate. But I think every person, whether it's a woman or a man, kind of has like their line in the sand of what's okay and what's not okay.
Sure.
As far as engaging with those sorts of things.
Again, it's valid. I mean, Marge is pissed, and maybe for Marge, her line in the sand is that it's like, nope, I don't want you going to any strip clubs. I don't want you getting lap dances. I don't want you even thinking about that. I don't want you watching porn. Some people might consider that watching pornography is already a form of cheating because you are deriving pleasure from something else that is not your partner, right? So
we see like people have double standards, in the episode, like with Mr. Burns, and the other man, it's a double standard. People, think this is offensive, this is wrong, but then secretly they're all about it, So there's always double standard. People, everybody has a line in the sand that they're just like, nope, don't like that. And Marge established it from the beginning.
Homer, is this some kind of stag party?
No, Marge. It's going to be very classy, a tea and crumpet kind of thing.
That's another gag I thought that was funny, where, like, I guess the guy getting married was Homer's assistant and is now a supervisor, and it took 6 months for him to meet the girl and is now marrying him. I was just like, boy, that's a fast turnaround.
That's a cool bit of storytelling in the first the first act of the episode. The way they set up the story, I think, was very good. 6 months passed, but it's fine. I mean, it's a good way to set things up in an economic way. I'll applaud that in terms of the storytelling of the episode. But I think like it raises so many interesting points about society and the way that we perceive sex work. Even the whole thing about male hypocrisy and the double standard and all of that is pretty on point. So I think that's probably why it's so disappointing that the final, let's say, message has to be delivered with such a, sledgehammer. You know what I mean? It's so kind of clunky, and because everything else is done, at least it's done in a funny way. And then and at least there's room for debate about what exactly the episode is trying to say. But at the end, there's kind of no room for debate anymore because it's very like straightforward. It's saying like, these women, we shouldn't objectify them. They are our mothers. Like that whole thing, it's very sweet, but he's delivering it in the strip club and everybody gets very moved by it. And
it's something everybody wants to go home to their wives because they didn't love their wives before then, but now they do.
The lounge singer played by Sam McMurray, he's like,
my mom sounded a little down the other day. I better give her a call.
It's so corny. I'm just going like, okay, that's fine. I can understand that, where it's like when you are objectifying, in doing that, you're forgetting that your mother's a woman. If you have a daughter, she's a woman. These people are women. Here, would you like someone to do that to them? Would you like someone to objectify them in that way?
And obviously their answer would be no.
Right, obviously, nobody would want that. No, even though you're doing it every time you watch a pornographic movie or every time you like go to a strip club or every time you.
But that's the thing. It's a very puritanical mindset. It's a very patriarchal mindset because that's the thing people always bring up. It's just like, well, would you want your daughter to do that? Da da da. And it's just like that's so messed up. Like it's like, if you say yes, then you must be a pervert, a filthy pervert, if you're okay with your daughter taking up that line of work. If you're okay with your mother being in that line of work, you have to be a filthy pervert. But if the alternative is no, then you are upright and morally righteous and a good person. Right. That's the thing. There's no winning in that scenario. To me, there's no winning. Because if people push like a puritanical mindset on this line of work, because you can't say in a patriarchal society, yeah, sure, I'd be fine with that if my kid were to do that, because you can't.
It's a big cliche though. It is very patriarchal, because you think about like I have a daughter. You know, she's 17, and she recently started dating. She's got like a regular boyfriend now. And if ever I bring that up, someone's like, "Ooh, so are you all like jealous?" And I'm like, "Well, no. Why would I be jealous?
No, why? You're a father. Like
that's gross. What, like it's not. It's more about this. This is how the conversation went when she told me that that she started dating someone. It was so like cool the way she brought it up too. She was like, "Dad, I met someone." That's such a weird way to, that's I think where I realized that my daughter was growing up, because of the way that she was like, "Dad, I met someone." I'm like, "You met someone?" We're like, "Where?" Like in the school lunchroom? Because she's a senior in high school. But so that my point is, so she tells me about that, and I'm like, okay, great, And what I told her was ultimately, well, do you like him? And I said, all I care about is that he respect you, and if you like him, great. And as long as he respects you, that's all that matters to me. And that's it. I mean, why would I be jealous? And why should I be jealous? Or why should I? And that whole thing about if you go out to like a party or whatever, and you're checking out someone you're attracted to. Mm-hmm. So sometimes what'll happen with guys will be like, you're checking out those hot girls, whatever. You wouldn't want someone checking your daughter out like that, would you? And I'm like, well, look, it's the mentality. Obviously, I don't want some sick asshole thinking about my daughter, but at the same time, if my daughter goes out partying and she like dresses up and she wants to look nice and she wants to have fun with people and be seen as attractive and all of that stuff, then that's good. Well, why would I be against that?
You're supposed to be. That's the thing. That's the thing. Society has put certain moralistic, paternalistic ideas that if you don't do this, then you must be a bad person or a bad father or a bad man or a bad woman, and if you choose the alternative, then you're bad. If you decide that you don't care about those things, then you're no good. Versus if you want to do the so-called right thing, then you are a righteous man. Then you are a righteous person. And that's the thing. There's so much like self-righteousness about this sort of thing. Where people who asked that? Like, are you jealous of your daughter's boyfriend?
Well, no. People ask that all. I mean, you are Hispanic, mm-hmm. and maybe it's a very Latino thing. Maybe it's a very, because we come from a very chauvinistic,
so absolutely
machistas. That's how it is, and it's because of that. And I think it's because of that. I mean, it's ultimately because of people project. The person's like, oh, well, how would you need to understand that your daughter or your sister or your mother or whoever is a person. You're actually objectifying your daughter or your mother or your sister or whatever when you do that, because you're projecting your own feelings. Because if you're the person who's objectifying women, then obviously now you feel all insecure because you know that somebody's going to be objectifying your daughter or your mother or your sister or whatever. So it's ultimately people who are projecting, and we're in a society that's very machista, right? We come from that society, the Latino culture, and I think it speaks to that. It's like it becomes a cliche. I mean, I'm in a band, and I will occasionally. There's this one bar where we frequently play called Dubliner. It's a faux Irish bar here in La Paz, and Thursday nights is when they usually have my cover band, my '90s cover band, play, and on that night, for whatever reason, we get tons of seniors, or at least high school seniors. And so there's always that whole thing, you're on stage and then you have all these people there. That's where I get the most comments about my daughter. It was like, your daughter could be among that crowd. And I'm like, well, not yet. She's still 17, but eventually, a year from now, they'll start letting her into bars. Yes. And, I'd like to think that I would trust her to take care of herself. I would hope that I have educated her and that her mother has educated her to the point where, yeah, she's going to go and have fun, and she's going to take care of herself, and she's going to be with friends that she trusts and people that she trusts, and she's got nothing to worry about. And that's it. that's what it's about. It's not. I mean, it's not like that's what it's about for me, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I think definitely the type of leanings in this episode are very paternalistic, very puritanical. Because that's just how people think about this sort of thing. There's a lot of like you know things involved. Like people talk about emotional cheating. Like how you were saying, like, oh, if you're a guy, you check out a girl, you're emotionally cheating. you know and some people believe in that sort of thing. People don't like that sort of thing. There's always drama about, like, oh, you liked that girl's Instagram picture, do you think she's pretty, da da da, things like that. Like,
Yeah.
and it could be perfectly innocent, but it also could perfectly not be innocent. That's the thing. It's hard to know what goes on with people's mindset when it comes to that sort of thing. And I think with this episode, Homer's mindset was completely innocent. He's a dummy. All he did was dance on a table with the pretty lady. I don't think he was necessarily emotionally cheating on Marge. Marge, on the other hand, with Frenchy French Bowling Man, was totally emotionally cheating. I would consider that emotional cheating. What Marge did in the previous episode.
Yeah, she comes this close. She's like at the fork in the road. It's so unsubtle.
So unsubtle. She was this close to risking it all. She was absolutely ready to risk it all. And all Homer did was dance with the pretty lady. So that, I think there's also insecurity on Marge's part, obviously, because the way and there's, that could be, from the animation standpoint, the way the Princess Cashmere is drawn. She's very curvaceous. She has like a, sexy outfit. The way she looks in comparison to Marge is obviously very different.
Hey, mister. Do 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 doody 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 doo.
Well, a doody do to you too, pint size.
Like, can we talk about the fetishization of Middle Eastern culture?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the other thing too. It's confusing because, well, yeah, that's a cliche in general. That the whole thing about, I mean, that's a whole other ball of wax if we want to talk about appropriation and everything else. But that's a different thing. But then again, in this particular case, the show is just portraying something in a fairly authentic light, where that does happen. There's so much that the episode does right in the way that it's trying to convey this message, and that to have it with that sledgehammery ending, I do think that, again, it brings us back to a place where it's all very patriarchal and very paternalistic, and I completely agree with you about that.
I'm trying to teach my son here about treating women as objects.
Well, that's a good idea. But April's over at Foxy Boxing tonight.
All right, so what do we think of this episode? What's our final verdict?
It's definitely a lot more complicated than you would initially think on first watch, but definitely me watching this, I was just like, it's such a sitcom-y episode. It's exactly the type of thing that you would see in a live action sitcom, and definitely comes away with the same lessons that you would see for that era. But I also think if there was an episode like that now, it would probably end up being the same type of way, the same sledgehammer type of ending. But I do like it. I just think the politics of the era just kind of fail it. And like you said, like, there's no room for debate in this episode. It's just like, you're either right or you're wrong.
When you say that if they were to do this today, you think it would be just as, like...
Yes.
Yeah. And the politics of it would still be the same. It would still be like demonizing sex work.
Because we still absolutely do. We absolutely do. Without a doubt, 100%. Obviously, there's some wiggle room in this day and age, but that's because the wiggle room, I think, lies in the Mr. Burns types, where it's just like they act outraged in public, but secretly are all about this sort of thing.
Yeah, secretly we all want to have some of Homer's animal magnetism to attract the fairer sex, or whatever it is that I think Homer has great animal magnetism. I wish I could talk to him about how do you do that? How do you get her to dance awkwardly on a card table? Man.
You know what's another gag I noticed that I thought was actually pretty good? That the Bachelor and his father did not seem to be enjoying the show. Like, it seemed like they were not on board with the dancer being hired.
That's a good point. Yeah, like we didn't really talk about that, and it's Yeah, I mean, I think again, it's part of the whole game plan of the episode in its end game where it's going. So it needs to sort of contrast it. This bachelor party was thrown by other people. Obviously, the groom doesn't give a shit, and in fact, it's very visibly uncomfortable to be there. Like he didn't want that. That's not. He had no interest in this, and so it's obviously Homer and the other boorish coworkers who were so like, yeah, we got to have a bachelor party, we got to have a stag party, we got to have a strip, we got to have the big sandwich, we got to have the whole thing. It's part of that whole that this is wrong, that you shouldn't be this way. Again, a valid point. You shouldn't be a boorish jackass who sees women as a piece of meat indiscriminately. Absolutely. I agree with that. But it's kind of naive to then go, you see, but not all guys are like that, because you have this nice guy who has no interest in having a bachelor party, who has no interest in this because, he's a decent person. He's a decent guy.
The show kind of portrays him as kind of like a wet blanket. Like, it's just like, dude, this is your own bachelor party, and you're just kind of like sitting in the corner, not even caring. Like, so there's that too, where it's just kind of the show is just like, all right, well, he's no fun.
Oh, this is the most fun I've ever had in my life.
Well, this was great. I mean, I'm really happy that we had this conversation. So I want to thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
Thanks for your perspective. It was great and very enlightening. And
thank you.
And thank you.
Very much appreciated. Thank you so much.
So that's it for this week's installment of the Simpsons Countdown. Thank you for joining us. If you enjoyed this, please give us a like. If you haven't yet, go ahead and subscribe. Feel free to leave a comment or two expressing your appreciation. And if it isn't too much trouble, please do share this with all your friends, both virtual and actual, on your social media platform of choice. Keep in mind, now and always, that everyone has a right to their perspective, and you definitely have every right to disagree with ours. Just remember to keep it civil if you do. I'm Erix Antoine, and next time I'll be joined by a great friend of mine from Colombia. We'll be discussing the Crepes of Wrath, in which Bart goes to France and very quickly comes to wish he hadn't. I hope you'll join us for that. And in the meantime, stay safe. Please stay home and take care of yourselves and your loved ones. Let's flatten that curve. Be well.
And you know something, folks? I would rather feel the sweet breath of my beautiful wife on the back.